Alright, this is a quick video on all the nodes in the node graph. If you have any questions or want to see the screenshots of all the spawn nodes, there's a link to a Discord in the description, or you can just ask the questions in the comment section. There will be more videos like this in the future. This channel is going to be focused specifically on the node graph. So subscribe to see more content like this. So to get to the node graph, you can either hold Q and go to this node graph wheel. I don't know what the hotkey is for controller, or you can spawn a script brain from the gameplay scripting tab here in the object browser, and then you can see all the scripting related objects. So there's a pointer, there's a brain, and then a bunch of switches. So to be able to edit a specific script brain, you just click it and you go inside of it. There's a short key that's called N to open it quickly on keyboard and mouse, so that you don't have to open and wait for this node graph window to pop up. So you can just hit N to open it, the selected one. So we're gonna go from top to bottom. I'm gonna have timestamps in the description of all of these. But just before we get started, so you can understand kind of what they look like. So the left side of a node has inputs and the right side has outputs. The little diamond is what is called next in the chain. So like once this executes, whatever this diamond is connected to will execute next. And then there's parameters that you would pass in that you can pass into the pass into the node, and then there will also be parameters that can be passed out of the node. So if we come over here and we look at, let's say, a different one, like let's go get a branch node. So you have the same inputs on the left that has a little diamond. Not all nodes are going to have diamond. Have a little diamond for controlling, to call the next thing. Some nodes work like information grabbers. They grab stuff, or getters and setters. So basically, I'll give an example of that real quick. So an object reference, you can reference objects from the scene if they're dynamic. If they have to be set to dynamic, and you can add them to the node graph and script them. So let's say we wanted to script a primitive block, like this tiny little block here. Let's say we wanted to script it. But what you have to do is, before you can import it, you select it. And right now, if you try to right click and add reference, it says you cannot reference static objects. So the fix for that is you come up to the object properties of the item you want to import and change it to dynamic. Now, the downside is you can't scale dynamic objects, and dynamic objects are basically the physics objects, where you can enable physics on them. So, you have to choose different presets of shapes. You can't just shape it any way you want, which sucks. But it shouldn't be that big of a deal. There's plenty of ways of getting around that limitation, or at least you can still get a lot done with that limitation. So, to import it, all you need to do is, go to primitive blocks, primitive, change it to dynamic, have it selected. So this is a dynamic phase. You see it says down here, dynamic phased. Then you open up the graph and you right click add object reference. And then you can use this reference in other nodes that actually execute code. Right here, this doesn't actually get directly called because you see there's no diamond. So that's the quick explanation of this. I'm going to have more videos specifically tailored for understanding the new scripting system. More focused, scripted examples. So let's just go from top to bottom and add every single node. So the first category we're going to go in is audio, and you can see most of these audio methods here. Audio nodes have a little diamond, so most of them are things that you would call. So like I said, if you ever get confused before, make sure that to actually do stuff, you need to move, you actually need to connect it to a diamond. Something that outputs a diamond or inputs a diamond. So like events, when we get to events, you'll see that events only have a diamond out and happen when stuff is called. So We have play 3D audio for all players, for opposing teams. For a team, we can register audio zones. So if you wanted to see, you can see, let me explain better. When you select these objects, you can see that there are, it says team and position parameters that this requires. To be able to modify them, you hit R and you come up here to the node properties, and you can see say in this case it says play this 3D audio for sound. You can click this and actually choose the sound here, like zone online, team vulnerable or whatever. You can, or there's going to be variables later on that you can see down here in the variables basic that you can pipe into these, and instead of like hard coding them in the node here. So I'm going to show all the node properties of these. None of these are all going to probably look the same. So zone effect, you can see category and name, stop ally sound and enemy sound, and then you can unregister the zone. So that's all the audio nodes. I haven't experimented with any of the bot nodes, but I don't think they'll be too difficult to understand by just looking at them. So you can see you have the ability to add bots, change the bot difficulty, get the bot's difficulty, check if the object. So it says right here a player input, but it can also, you can put objects into it. So players and objects are kind of the same thing. It's basically it's expecting a player, and it won't return won't return the bot if it's not a bot. So if it is a bot, it will return false. Or if it is a bot, it will return true. If it's not, it's false. But you can there's another node like this in the player that says get is player. So it checks if it's a player or not. So it says the player input here. Some of the namings are quite confusing. They don't tell you the kind of base type that is expecting, which it says player here is basically expecting any object that you can check to see if it is a bot or not. Like I could check this cube, and I could check if this cube's a bot. So if I was to select this cube, come back inside, added object reference, I can put the player in here, and it's like, it's letting me connect it up, because an object in this name player here is the same thing. So some of the wording's a little confused, and you have to kind of like think about it and like try to understand like the weird naming of it. It's kind of annoying. And then there's remove all bots, and then remove specific bot from the match. So if you had, in the case that we were just in when we had the reference, let's say we wanted to remove, if this was a bot, we could put the bot that we wanted to remove, and then call this, and it would remove this bot. So let's go look at all the object properties for each. So there's bot difficulty, and then you can choose the team that you want it to go on, and there are 8 teams here you can choose from. I assume that needs to be set up in the custom game, like the actual game mode, but you have your bot difficulties. Wow, I had a little UI bug there. You have your bot difficulties. You could have the output of bot that when you can't change, and then this one doesn't have any properties because it just does something without returning anything. Then just remove specific bot from the match, and that's all the bot related nodes. Now events are the big one. This is where you actually get most of the, from these you get a lot of work done. This is where you're probably going to start. So as you can see here, some of these don't have inputs, but have a little diamond output. So this node here, this will be called whenever the game starts, or this is whenever gameplay starts, so whenever the first player is spawned. And that's important because you can do a little setup before players actually spawn, so that everything is set up before they actually start spawning. Because there can be a little delay sometimes on getting things done. When you call it on gameplay start, sometimes they might see something move that you don't intend them to see. And doing it on game start appears to happen before Also, all these nodes have documentation here at the bottom that you can read a little bit. They kind of explain basically, very basic words of what it does. But all these events are very important. You'll be using them a lot. On an object area exit. So these object areas are very cool, but I don't think they currently work. They allow you to create a King of the Hill style area and monitor what's in that area. I'll try to stack these in a way that you can see them all at once. So like when I was talking about with the on object area exited, so if you come into a dynamic object, so it has to be dynamic, you have to set it here in the properties to dynamic. But if you scroll down on the object properties, you're going to see below the visuals in the gameplay, there's a boundary. Modifies properties to adjust the size shape of the object boundaries, which is used by volumes. A CTF flag returns, teleporter scripting, etc. So what you can do here is you can actually set a boundary to a box or a cylinder. We'll set it to a cylinder, and if you increase the bottom, you make sure all these numbers actually are increase all these different numbers here. Basically, these are the size. Like this is the how tall it is on the top and the bottom. But you also, when you change these by default, they actually don't do anything. Like, oh, they're not working. Where's the boundary? You have to show it here. And then it will actually, you can see it update and like how tall it is and how different it is. But you can actually get these. There's a variable to get an object monitor in the basic variables tab. We'll get to that when I start spawning those objects. But it allows you to monitor what enters and exits this area. So if I come over here, it says on object exited area. You can monitor what objects leave this little white area. And you can have multiple of these areas. So nothing's stopping me from duplicating these and having multiple. So let's say you want to have an area that, let's say, heals you. You're standing in a spot and you want it to give you health, or set your health, or let's say you want to die. You can do that in code. You can wire these up, drag them in, and then check when an object enters an area. It's actually really cool. So here's all the events. I think next we go on to events custom. So these are really cool because they allow you to make your own events. So by default, when you spawn or open up the little queue menu, this little like tool menu here, and you go to node graph, you might think you only have the ability to make a singular node graph, but you don't. You can make multiple script brains, which is what these are called. You can get to them in the scripting tab of the object browser. But you can spawn as many of these as you want. So if you ever get confused and you try to hold Q and open up the node graph and your things aren't here, it might be because you've selected the wrong script brain. Well, see, in this case, I actually duplicated them. I duplicated this script brain with Control D. So if I come over here and I select this one and I open it and I delete all of the nodes that we added just before, you can see when I go back into it, they're still gone. But if I selected this one over here, the original one, they're there. So you can have different kind of script brains to control different aspects. It's really important that's for this so that you can kind of separate things that are not relevant to each other, because you don't want to do everything in just one script brain. It will become a big spaghetti code mess. It will make it really hard to read and figure out what to do and what's going on. So normally what you want to do is separate things that are not relevant to each other into different script brains. And that's where these custom events come in. So like the events we have over here, the pre-built ones like on round start, on game start, we can actually create our own to be called whenever we want. Currently it's not gonna work because we need to on this on custom event we need to feed it in an identifier. We'll get to those later, probably in a specific video for it. But down here in the basic variables, there's an identifier variable that you can fill in and actually create an identifier for a custom event. There's also other variables to like to do a lot of different stuff here, like actually creating your to store information. But in this build, I don't think the identifier system is currently working, so I'm not going to cover it too much. And then you can on custom event log global. So basically, you can also like you can register events globally so that all your script brains can listen to them. And all you need is that identifier. So I'll cover this in a more like focused video on events, because when they're actually working and are in a more working state, because they're going to be incredibly powerful and they're going to be really good for decoupling different script brains and different objects, so that you can have one script brain do a task, and then when that task is done, all the other script brains that care about that task will know without having to right-click or reference them. It's really going to be really powerful. And if you're familiar with programming, most of this is like, oh, duh moment. But it's very powerful, and I really like the system so far. It is very cool that they actually added custom events so that you can actually decouple your script brains. So now we're on to event inventories. Most of these are related to players picking up weapons. I guess maybe also bots. I don't think it's specific. Maybe it can... I guess it depends on... So let's get these in a nice box. Look over these real quick. So on equipment pickup, on equipment used, obviously this makes sense. So when equipment is picked up, you get a little execute thing to tell it what to call next. You get to see the player, the equipment, and where that equipment was. On equipment used, the activating player and type. On weapon refill pickup, on acquiring player weapon position is fully picked up. I'm not sure what they mean by it's fully picked up, but let's go show all of the different node properties as well. Most of these are going to be pre-calculated stuff. Like you see, this is calculated up here in the very faint gray text. So most of these you're not going to really be able to configure unless they have inputs on the left. But these event nodes are incredibly powerful, and it's what's going to drive the actual like custom scripting element of this. Of the new Forge mode. So now we're on to the events of all the players. Now a lot of these are actually really cool. Like on kill assist, you can get like on kill assist, death context. You can there can be a lot you can be able to do here with creating custom game modes. Which again, I want to make a more focused video on these events. Oops. So let's go through and look at all the different node properties. I'm just going to go over these quickly. You also have the ability to rename the nodes from what I think. You can change the... Well, I'm not sure. You might be able to rename these nodes later. Because right now the folder system doesn't work. I'm not sure. It seems like you're going to be able to rename objects in the world, so... Currently, right now, everything's a little buggy. Oops. Alright, so there is all the That's all the events of players. So it says events custom events players. It's not, you have to read it backwards. It's events players. So now we're onto the game mode stuff. And as you can probably see, a lot of these nodes have different colors to kind of distinguish between the multiple types or different categories of nodes. Currently, it does not appear that you can customize those colors, which sucks. Alright, so there's all the game mode stuff. Now a lot of these are probably going to be... You can see a lot of these have different endpoints here. Different inputs, I mean. So like... The team... I'm not too sure how to use all these. I've not experimented because, again, you can't really play multiplayer with this stuff right now. Not easily, at least. So I want to go over all the different node properties for each. I'm going over it quite quickly, but there should be enough time that if there's a node you care about, you can pause and look. Alright, and there's all the gameplay nodes. Now we're going to go to all the inventory nodes. Alright, so here's all the inventory nodes. It's kind of hard to get them all on screen. There's a lot of them. But this should be this should get them all. So I'm gonna go over each one of their node browser or their node properties now. Like I said before, just pause on the nodes that you care about. And if you have any questions about the specific nodes, I'll answer them in the comments. And then now we're on to inventory equipment. Because now before we were on just the inventory, now we're on the equipment, like some of these will affect grenades and even custom equipment. Which you'll see when we get down to some of the variable categories. Alright, so there's the inventory equipment, all the inventory equipment nodes. I want to go over their properties. Let's kind of move these out of the way so that circles aren't overlapping. So here are their properties. Now on to the logic nodes. Now these are also going to be very commonly used because they allow you to do different things like different branches and checks and compares. Be very important to know all these nodes because they're going to be used a lot. Especially this branch node is going to be used a lot. This one's also good. There's a wait for n seconds. This will allow you to like halt the execution of another block for a certain duration. So you can like set this to a number in seconds. You can also get if the mode isn't forged, so you can actually start writing some like debug script stuff to kind of help you like test stuff while you're forging, but not actually run in forge, because you can do like branch conditions or branch checks and or compares to check if it's in forge or not, and if it is in forge, then you know, don't do a thing. But here's all the, we're gonna get a decent spot for a screenshot of all the logic nodes. And then we're going to go over each of their properties. Now most of these you won't use by themselves or be changing these properties. You'll be feeding stuff into them. But still, just in case anyone was curious about the node properties menu of these nodes. Because if I didn't have access to it, I would be. Alright, well there's all the logic nodes. On to math. Now, these are also very important, but they might not be as important to some types of game modes. Okay, my game just crashed, so I'm gonna put a pause on this and open the game back up. Alright, here's all the math nodes. There are a lot of these nodes. You're gonna be using them a lot. Maybe not all of these a lot, but some of them are very important, like the multiply and the add vectors, and you're gonna use them a lot if you get into like doing physics with objects. Alright, so here's all the math nodes. I'm gonna show all the node properties. See, most of these you can kind of fill in the numbers by default. Or you can use variables and pull them in, but I'm just going to show the node properties window here. I'm not going to go in to click each one of these because most of these are pretty self-explanatory, like add. You add numbers together and add vectors. You have vector inputs. So, you know, use a little bit of context clues to figure out, like, you know, add, these are for numbers and these inputs are for vectors. There's a little bit of a learning curve in that, in the node graph here for things like that. They don't do a great job at explaining. And there's all the math nodes. Objects are also, the object list here is also going to be very important because you can check if, like, if objects and players can be used interchangeably. So here is, you can get if, like, an object is dead. I'm pretty sure this is, you would also use this on a player. Or a bot. So if you're looking to check and see if a player is dead, or damaging an object, come look at the objects list. Because kind of all scriptable things can be objects. Like, objects are kind of like the root component of script, like all the scriptable objects in the game. As I was saying before, here's the get objects in area monitor. You can actually use those bounds inside of a physics object, inside of, like, when you go select the object and you can choose the bound, can actually change the size of the bounds. You can actually use this to get the objects inside an area monitor, and an area monitor you can get from a bound. But I don't think they work in this build because I haven't got them to work yet. And I've heard from a few people that they are broken. Alright, so here's all the object nodes. Right now I want to show all of the node properties. I'm gonna go through this quick. You can see there were no inputs on that one, but alright, and there are all the object nodes. Now we're going to look at object transforms. Now these are quite important because, so a transform, it's these little, these numbers at the bottom of your screen when you have an object selected, the position, the rotation, and the scale. So that's a transform. And there's also, inside of a transform, it has the velocity, but you can't see that or set that in the menu here. So a transform is basically the three little axis widget looking thing here. That is what a transform is. And you can get and set them and manipulate the transforms of every object, or even players as well, through this, through the node graphs objects transform thing. Alright, here is all of the objects transform nodes. You're going to be using these a lot, like get object position and translate object to point are some pretty important ones. Or if you're into like doing some more physics stuff, setting an object's velocity and things like that are going to be very, very important. Now we're on to players. Can reorganize these a little bit so but they're a little bit easier to see all at once. Alright, so here's all the player nodes. So I want to go through each of the node properties real quick. And there's all the player nodes. Now we're down to traits. A lot of these are like different like status effects of like a Spartan. So like invisibility, clamber speed, grenade pickup, melee, gravity, and whatever. And you can apply these to different people that are in different zones, or just random people, or a lot of different things you can do with these traits. It's gonna be quite difficult getting all these traits on the screen, but Alright, here is every trait. I want to go through each one of them and quickly look at the node properties, even though it's going to take 10 hours. Sorry this video is going to be really long like the last one, but getting all this information in video form is tedious. No, I eventually might make a video explaining what all the different nodes do. But if I did that, it would be a 15-hour video, because there are so many nodes. But I might work on that. I might start working on that now, soon. Relatively soon. I'm not sure. It's gonna take a very long time to do. And without the ability to save right now, it's quite rough. So I might wait until the game actually comes out and then create a tutorial map kind of showing all the different nodes and how to do stuff. And I'll put it on my file share. That's when the game comes out. That's when this mode comes out, so it could be a while from now. Alright, and then there's all the trait nodes. The UI nodes are really cool too. These allow you to do different UI messages. Now, before anyone asks, the strings are predefined. Here's a quick tick through of all the different strings you can use. A little too fast there. So you can't actually choose custom strings. You have to use the predefined things, which sucks, but now these print numbers to kill feed and stuff, I'm not sure if they're gonna actually work in normal custom games or if they only work in Forge, but here's all the UI, here's all the, also there's up here, there's name templates. I should show these as well. So there's some templates as well. And that should be mostly everything. So here's all the different the properties menus. Here's stuff related to the nav mesh stuff. Currently, I don't think any of the level building features are enabled or working, or they're bugged. So I haven't really tested these out too much. But these allow you to manipulate how bots interact with the map, and hopefully we'll get some actual AI to be able to put in custom games, like different AI from the campaign, so that we can create like kind of our own campaign missions inside of custom games. All right, so here's all the nav mesh. Here's the whole nav mesh category, or UI nav markers. So now we're on the variables basic. These are going to start going quick because we're getting a lot of these are pretty self-explanatory, and there's not a lot left. So these are the different variables that you can create and fill. So a lot of these you can actually, is what you'll fill stuff with, like the string. You'll go into the properties and actually fill it in here because they have no input. So these are like constant variables. You can create variables that can change. That's in the next category, the advanced variables. It's just in the current build they're bugged, and you can only have one that works. I think. It's very inconsistent. Alright, so here's the node properties for all of these. Now most of these are of the type of their name. So like the Boolean, where it says empty, is true or false, and the number is like, you know, like a number. So most of these types are, you know, pretty self-explanatory. See, like custom equipment or whatever, an active camo, you can assume the value is off their name. Alright, now we're on to variables advanced. So these are how you would create your own variables to manipulate later, like in the, you know, in the future. So a lot of these, like I said before, these are a little bugged right now. And I can't get them to work consistently. You can get them to work, they just don't work all that well. So how this system works is you have to declare a variable, and then you can set it and get it. So here we declare it, and there's like the different identifier, the node, the initial value, and the scope. And the scope is basically just like, is it local to this graph? Is it to the object? Or is it global to the entire scene? I'm not too sure on actually what object is. I know local is probably this script brain, but in the actual game actually comes out, I'm gonna do some experimenting and then make a video on this whole system because these are also very important. So there's all the declares. So I'm gonna do these by there's no way I would get all these on the screen at one time. So I'm gonna do it in 2 parts here. So these nodes is how you would actually get the values that you store, and then after this, later in the list is how you set them. So now there's the gets, and here are the set. Alright, so here is all the different, all the different objects. Oops. I'll try to get them in a decent spot to see all of them at once. It's not easy. Alright, so that's... we can do a little better than that. So now most of these have the same properties that you would modify, so I'm only going to show one from each category, what they all look like. So here is all of the advanced variables. So here's what the property menu for a declare node looks like. Here's what one looks like for the set. And here's what one looks like for the get. Now these identifiers we already looked at. We spawned an identifier node in the basic variables, and that's how you'd actually set this identifier. So there's all the nodes for the advanced variables, and now we're on the vehicles. All right, and here are all the vehicle nodes. We go through all their node properties as well. Most of these are the same, but I'm just going to show them for consistency. Just in case someone's curious for some reason. All right, and then there is every single node graph node in the game currently. I suspect they're going to add a lot more as time comes, or at least I hope they do, because there are some nodes that I would love to see that don't exist. Like raycasting is currently a thing that you can't do, which I would love to be able to. It would be very important for some game modes that I was thinking about making, but hopefully they add more. The nodes that are in the game currently are incredibly powerful, and you can do a lot with them. But yeah, that's everything. I'm going to be posting screenshots of all of the nodes spawned together in my Discord. There'll be a link in the description, and in the future I plan on making a ton more content on these nodes. That's what the main focus of this channel is going to be, is the node graph. All right, so if you have any questions, answer them, ask them in the description, and I'll answer, or go to the Discord in the description and ask questions there.